analogy I like to talk about in the short time I have is an organic approach to education. Organic is a very big buzzword. You hear it all the time in restaurants and at the supermarket. I'm going to use that. Anyway, a bit of a background about me, my filters as well. I have been in education for 20 years. 15 of those years has been in international education. One of the reasons I left Australia, I can show you later why. But I've been lucky to be able to work in Japan, Hong Kong, and Germany. So I've seen different styles in those places, and this is kind of like a summary of where my thinking is at this stage of my life. So I was asked to talk about learning spaces. This is a familiar look. I've seen it. I grew up in a very similar situation. I had my own desk and I had my own little thing, tray. It's exactly the opposite of what Maya's just been talking about. This is probably a recent photo. It's pretty saddening, to be honest. This is where we are now. This is my school, International College Hong Kong, Yuen. It took a long process to get to this stage. So you can see the collaborative watering holes there. We are very comfortable with kids working on the floor. He's so engaged. Another watering hole, the kids love those bean bags. And I'll show some more photos. The big thing for me with anything is there needs to be a why. You can't do a what or a how without the why. I'm not here to actually bring down McDonald's. I actually, every now and then in my life, I do enjoy having a Big Mac. It does serve its purpose. But the problem is, and this is the analogy we've got to move away from, is if you go and have McDonald's, or actually I'll go back, if you're going to get a Big Mac anywhere around the world, it's exactly the same. That's its purpose. You know what you're going for. Unfortunately, education has been in this style for a long, long time. I have been to different schools around the world and I see stuff that I was brought up with in Australia and it's, oh really, we're still there? So we have this fast food model and then we've got to get away from this fast food model. It's pre-prepared, so if we go back to a previous slide, there is textbooks all on the desk. Every kid's going to open up the exact same page. We know what's happening that day. I know this happens in some schools, the French education system, they know exactly everywhere around the world where the kids are at, it's the same. It is actually based on the 19th century model. Schools were developed to help the industrial age. We haven't moved away from that in the last 200 years, even though the industrial age is no longer with us. It's easy to do. It's easy to have the prepackaged thing. There's no thinking behind it. But at the end of the day, if I have my Big Mac or two, I don't feel good afterwards. That fast food model really works for jobs that are linear and analytical. And I know this is a big thing in Hong Kong. I even spoke to some parents yesterday. They want their sons or daughters to be doctors or lawyers. Unfortunately, being a lawyer is not going to be available in the near future. All those type of jobs are they're obsolete or they're overabundant. They're getting done in India or China for much cheaper, or the technology is doing it for them. Even lawyers, the paralegal work that lawyers usually rely on can now be done by computers. Algorithms can do that. So you've got to think beyond that. And I've got it there. 30% of the job market, it's going to get smaller. So we have to think differently because we have to prepare kids for jobs that don't exist. Okay, so using that buzzword, organic. Organic food looks nice. The colors are nice. Hopefully each one of those apples are slightly different or really different. Those carrots look very different and we should accept that. It's a nurturing process. It takes a long time. It actually is very messy. It allows for personalities to shine through and we have to be adaptable. So think of a farm. That's what the image I want in your mind at the moment. The school is the soil and the tools that we use to cultivate these children. The adults and the peers around them provide those conditions. Think about the sun and the rain when you're trying to grow a farm. And if you understand farming, it grows at its own pace. You can't determine exactly when that crop is going to yield its fruit. You have to be patient. So this is the job skills that was released by Time magazine in 2015. That's about 3 years old. I don't see there's going to be much difference there. Maya talked about 21st century skills. This is what we should be aiming for. We should be designing our classrooms for this. We should be designing our curriculum for this. This is another, Daniel Pink wrote a very good book called A Whole New Mind. And do we have a pointer on there? Whoop. Anyway, so we've designed schools back here in the industrial age. Schools still work in that industrial form. We still have bells that go off at a very particular time for kids to line up in lines and march in. The bell goes off at lunchtime, they all go sit in the same place. It's exactly like a factory. We've actually now into the conceptual age. We've moved from the knowledge age where some schools are trying to get into, some job markets still think they're there. We're actually in the conceptual age, and that conceptual age is all about creativity and empathy. They're the types of jobs that we've got to start looking towards. They're the competencies we should develop. I would invite you now to stand up for a minute. Can you please? You don't have to. I'm inviting you to if you like to stand up. That's all you have to do is just to stand. I'm not going to get you to do anything else. All the research we have, we're in a very lucky age. We have a lot more research about how the brain works than we did even 10 years ago. The brain really needs novelty. If you want kids to retain new things, you have to present it in a new way. So if you present it in a textbook, if you go in and present it the exact same way, even this form I'm doing now, it's not novel. It's pretty boring. You have to inspire the brain. The brain retains more information if it's new. I invited you to stand up is because the brain needs movement. That's how it's designed. If you sit for 20 minutes, the melatonin in your brain is released. The melatonin is what you need to sleep. So essentially, the brain thinks you're sleeping. So imagine what you've been doing for the last hour. Your brain's slowly switching off. So imagine what happens in your classroom when you're talking for more than 20 minutes and the kids are just sitting there. I invite you to sit down now. Something as simple as that is every 20 minutes, maybe even have an alarm go off on your watch. Invite kids to stand up for 1 or 2 minutes or do some sort of brain break activities. It really helps with their learning and retention of knowledge. The brain, and even the youngest kids, need to find meaning to what they're learning. If they don't see the purpose, the brain actually switches off. Well, what I'm doing right now is I'm talking to you. My brain is also receiving information from the lights over here. I've got a camera over here. I've got people talking over here. All this information is coming in at once. That's a lot of information to process. So what the brain does is it starts shutting down things to go, okay, I don't have to worry about that, or that. But if there's something meaningful, the brain will concentrate on that. So you have to make that learning meaningful for the brain, for that child's brain to kick on. Use emotion. Make the kids happy, or make them, fear is probably a strong word, but make them actually surprised about something to get the brain going. The brain needs hands-on experiences. This is how we've learned for centuries before schools ruined all that. The brain needs people to pick up things and play with things. We need social interaction. The reason why humans exist now is because we actually work together, socialized. That's why we're successful. And you need time. Hong Kong has this terrible problem, and many other schools, of putting homework and homework and homework on after school. That actually doesn't help with the learning. The brain needs time to switch off. So if you can think of a plant, you have a plant at home, and you water the plant, and you keep watering that plant, and you keep watering that plant's going to die. It hasn't had time to actually soak up the water. Think of that with learning. Let the kids switch off for a bit. So that's the why, in a very short time. So how can you do that? It can't come from one person, can't come from one leader, can't come from one teacher. It has to be a collaborative, a whole cultural effort. So it starts with the philosophy. At the school I was at, we had a great conversation about what learning is. We've had that conversation for about 12 months. That was leadership and the teachers, and we used student input as well. So we come up with 8 key things we are now going to base every single decision in the school on. Our learners are the center of the learning. They know what they need to learn. They are much more competent than we give them credit for. Allow them to be part of the decision-making process and then watch what they're doing and use what they can do to inform the next steps in planning. Well-being, someone mentioned it before, it's crucial. If they're not happy, if they're not healthy, learning just doesn't work. Motivation, it can be done in different ways. Hopefully you're looking at intrinsic motivation. A little bit of extrinsic does work every now and then. That's for short-term gains, but for the long-term gain, you want to motivate them. It is collaborative. It involves many people. Put down, the rights of the individual. I'm going to change that slide after I really liked how you said that. And the key thing to learning is assessment. And that's not just testing, that's sitting down and having conversations with your students or the child. It's really important to make time for conferencing. A test gives you one slight indication of what's going on, but a good conversation will get you further. I could spend a whole talk just on those 8 things. Oh, there's more there. Sorry, I can't count apparently. It's contemporary and fluid. That means we keep learning things. So that we keep learning stuff about the brain, we should change how we approach education. So what I learned as an educator when I finished university 20 years ago, most of it doesn't really count anymore. And it's a lifelong process. We really need to understand that. We have to push that with kids, that learning doesn't stop when you finish school. We have to, encourage that. The reason that we got learning and learners in this is it doesn't just talk about our students. This manifesto is also for our teachers. So when I'm as leaders trying to support my staff in becoming better teachers, this is what I go back to and the practices I would expect for myself to help develop those. Okay, so what can you change? Think organically. Okay? Be comfortable with mistakes. Mistakes are the learning. Okay? Trying to just regurgitate knowledge is not the learning. Remember that, it's messy. It's horrible. Sometimes you're pulling your hair out and you go home at the end of the day and go, what have I done or what's going wrong? It's messy. It's hard, but you've got to think long term. It's all about trust. Trust your kids. Set up the environment in your classroom where they have the autonomy or the agency to go and choose what they want or sit where they want. Have faith in them. If you've created the right environment, they'll do the right thing. They know that they love learning. Kids love learning. Don't think that they can't do that. Ask questions. Try not to give answers. It's really difficult. I've been teaching now for 20 years, or in education for 20 years. I still slip into that old habit. I know the answer is this. Design learning around multiple answers. I'll give you an example of that too. But encourage discussion. The world is not black and white. It's not A equals plus B equals C. It is not that way. And talk with your kids. Spend time with them. It's so important. They know how they learn. They know where they want to learn or what they want to learn. Just spend time doing that, and that informs your practice. Okay, this is one of the things I said, design multiple answers. Oop, I've skipped. So if you had to move one stick to make this equation right, what would that be? Does someone want to be brave enough and give an answer? 5 plus 4? Is that, oh, you're moving that stick over to there? Yeah. You could also have this move over there, so 8 minus 4 equals 4. The analogy here is there's not just one answer. So as a teacher, if some kid puts up their hand and says, oh, it's, what did you say, 5 plus 4 equals 9, don't just move on. Encourage the collaboration and the discussion. Design your lessons that allow that to happen. This is what we changed to help change the culture at the school. Every Wednesday afternoon, we shut school an hour early so we can have collaborative planning time. And for the first 15 minutes of that session, our teachers will run one of, there's 3 options. They start it, it changes every week. This has just happened to be some mindful meditation during that week. And that first 15 minutes, they choose some way to kind of wind down. What we're seeing is that the teachers are way more involved in the collaborative planning that follows afterwards, and the environment around the school is really calm and chilled. And people are coming together and working closer together. This did not come from leadership. This came from teachers. Leadership's role is to allow this to happen. And the fact that they choose different activities each week is another example of that. I think this is my second last slide. We have a forest school. We've just launched at our school. So the kids go out and play to develop those 21st century skills or those competencies. Again, that's a completely different talk. But what I want you to give, the last image I want in your head is how happy those kids are. That's your goal. The knowledge is not that important. You want happy, confident kids who can actually get that high in a tree. That's the desire we have at our school. That's what you should do to change things in education. I'll leave you, oh, sorry. I lied about that. I thought I switched that around. Anyway, going about learning spaces. We realize in Hong Kong this is a problem. When it rains and it rains a lot, all of a sudden the play stops because they're stuck inside. So we thought outside the box and went, let's just get kids raincoats. So when it rains, doesn't matter except for the T3 that came through this week. But when it rains, they're outside playing. That doesn't stop them, and we know play is really important. So going back to some of the designs, this came from the teachers and from the kids. Leadership didn't actually have much to do with this. We just provided the right talking time for it. Maya talked about cave spaces or the nooks and crannies. The kids have automatically made that themselves. You have to be comfortable with that. Feels like I'm at Starbucks. Anyway, this is my last slide. I'll leave you on this. Something to think about. Thank you very much.